Hello, and thank you for joining this episode of Build by Humans. Today we have Max, who is joining us, and we'll talk, as always, about teams, what it takes to build a great one, what it takes to work across different time zones, different regions. Building great products has always been a lot more than just technology. It's about getting people to talk to each other and getting people to communicate. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Max. Please introduce yourself, tell us about your background and what you do.
Yeah, how you doing? Max Kryzhanovskiy with MOS Creative. We are a software development and digital agency. Been in business for right around 20 years at this point. We work with clients from the idea stage and all the way through a life cycle, from planning, UX UI design, development, deployment, and then upkeep and driving traffic to it as well. So we have clients that come to us just at an idea, not really sure where to go as the next step from there. And then we have clients that come at different stages of the life cycle. And we try to support them to make sure that the product they're building makes sense, make sure we communicate, what is the goal of the product, why it's needed, and how to make sure that it's actually understood by the users that they're going after.
Cool. So it sounds like you're providing more than just development services, right? People can
Correct.
come in, they'll ask for help, and you do the business side of it and then implementation. So you are what people refer to in outsourcing, right? An outsourcing shop, an outsourcing company. Obviously, you do a lot more than just software development, but it's it's about outsourcing. You have the expertise, you have the knowledge, and you have the team, right? I'm assuming it's your team that works on a product, right, and helps
Correct.
clients build
Yes.
product.
Yeah.
So let's talk a bit about, are you guys remote? Are you where are you located? Where are your people located? How does it typically work?
Yeah. So majority of so we do have an office. A majority of the team is remote. Even the people that live not too far away from the office, I allow them to work remotely as well. I think the time that they spend, they would be driving to the office in the car and back. It's just time that's spent without any type of use. Nobody's really benefiting from it. So this allows for them to be a little more flexible. They can start earlier if they need to. They can finish a little earlier if need to, or they can work a little later if needed to finish their work. If something's going on around the house, they can do it. So just think people feel a little more flexibility and
Right.
ease, less anxiety, right? So you don't have to be like, oh my God, I gotta drive home. I got my kids, so I think it's just easier.
Absolutely. I've been remote, my entire company, so our entire company, Mirigos, been remote since day one. Since the moment we started, this is way before COVID. We started in 2014 as a business, as a company, and we've been remote, right? We don't have an office. We used to have an office for developers because that's what clients wanted. Then COVID helped us solve that problem. But we as a running, right, as a team, we're like, I live in Los Angeles and I'm the only person who's physically in the United States. And I've got people in Spain, in Ukraine, in Azerbaijan, in Poland, right? So they're all over the place. And obviously our developers are all over the place as well.
Yeah.
But that's, yeah. And I think the flexibility, right? It's people value that more than anything else.
Right. I agree. 100%.
So let's talk a little bit about outsourcing, right? We are in similar businesses. I run a company that, in fact, our tagline is "We fixed what's broken in outsourcing," right? So we sort of frame ourselves. We're not an outsourcing company, but we're in the same business because we have the same type of clients, people that are trying to build software and do that.
Right.
What happens in your case in outsourcing world? So let's say I'm a startup, right? I come over and I say, "Hey, Max, help me out. I'm building this product," and you'll take it over and you build it. What happens as I grow? What happens with the tribal knowledge? What happens with, am I ever able to really transfer the data, not physical data, but the knowledge data to my team as the team keeps growing?
That's a good question. So we have several flexible models where once we build the product, we had an opportunity a while back. From this point on, this is what we started doing. The client was like, listen, you built a great application. Could you help us? Could we actually take one of your people to be able to work on it? So kind of like it was more like staff augmentation that worked specifically on their product and they would manage them. And then at a certain point, they got even bigger and they said, hey, can you help us actually find more talent to build around it? So that was a really good opportunity for us to say, well, how do we bridge the gap of we build a product, maybe they're raising money or they already have money, but they're scaling up. How do we find more talent for them? So we start offering not all the team members, but some team members to be able to be augmented, right, on their staff. They would manage them. And then we also start offering to specific clients that would make sense to actually find the talent for them. So we will find the talent for them full time. And then the goal, I'll tell you, the goal behind it is not like we weren't trying to really become a staffing agency. The goal
Mhm.
behind it was to get them inside to work with the company. We have a hopefully relationship, a good relationship, and then they will be able to say, "Hey, we need additional help. Who do we go to?" So it was more like we have people that would be able to help them all the way through.
And do you find a large percentage, small percentage of clients that moves to that model, or most keep it as an outsourcing model for a long period?
I would say majority of the people outsource. Some of the people that really scale up, that really understand how to grow their business, at a certain point do want to hire their own talent, their own staff, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes they go through us, sometimes majority of the times they usually do it on their own, you know. So we try to ask those questions beforehand to really figure out, hey, do you need our help? But most of the time, especially if you're raising money, you want to have your own team in-house, you know. We
Right.
might be as additional partner, you
Mhm.
know, but usually they want a team in-house.
So let's talk a bit about communication. And in your case, it's even more, well, I'd say complicated, but definitely more intrigued. Because you have a team, the team is remote. There's a communication within the team, right? So let's talk about a pod, right? Pod that works in product X. But then there's also a client, right? And now they have to communicate with the team and they may be able to communicate. I don't know, in your model, do they only work with like project managers, leaders, or do they work with everybody, a team member? But how do you address that? How do you address that communication alignment? And also there's a big cultural alignment, right? Because you have your employees, so they work for your company, they know how you guys do things, but then there's a client and they do things their certain way, their own way. And right, there's this, how do you bridge it together?
So we do usually, yeah, there's usually a project manager that's working on a project. Client sometimes, depending what type of project it is, if there's a need, client sometimes does communicate with a project manager and a developer or designer. But usually, main point of contact is project manager, product manager. Your question is how do they communicate amongst each other, or how do they communicate with the client if there's a project management?
So if they only communicate with the project manager, then I guess they only communicate within the team, right? They don't have, so the basically, I don't know if I'm hearing this right, but the individual contributors, individual developers are not necessarily exposed to the client directly. Is that correct?
Yeah, unless for specific projects, unless it's needed, and the client is like, "Listen, I do want to talk to developers." Well, usually it's not just like, "Hey, here, just email everyone," right? Or contact. It's just going to be very messy.
Mhm.
So there's got to be one point of contact from the client side. Should be one point of contact from our side. When we have sprint calls or when we have specific discussions, then more of the team can join. But if you're just like, hey, listen, like they might be in our project management environment. We use a platform for it. If they're in an environment, if they have a specific question to a certain person, they can ask that question, obviously. But
Yeah.
we don't want them just to be like, hey, let me message this person, and like all of a sudden you're messaging five people when you could just message one and get the answer. Just a lot cleaner.
Sure. And I think it boils down to different mindset and different ideas. Like in my world, and I spent most of my life running engineering teams, startups, I've always wanted to have direct contact with the developer, right?
Sure.
If I have a developer on this side or a project manager on this side or whatever it is, and somebody's working on that feature, and have them talk directly, not go through this route of a single point of
Right.
failure or single contact. I'll never forget. Actually, this was funny. It was my first job in IT back in 1992, and I worked for a larger company, and they had a process, right? So I worked in one group and we had a manager, and then there was a product manager, and the other team, development team, had their manager, and they had the developers. And we were not allowed, and I'm talking about sitting in the same office, right? Sitting
Oh
10
yeah.
feet from each other, but we were not allowed to talk directly. I had to talk to my manager who gets escalated, then goes down, etc. If one of them was out sick, the whole thing dies, right? It just
Oh,
sits there, it just
yeah.
dies. And this is, more than 30 years ago, but I still remember that as pretty funny
Yeah.
as in
Yeah.
like, okay, that just doesn't work.
So I agree with you in terms of I think it's better and quicker sometimes to get answers from a developer specifically that's working on it. I totally agree with you. Only, I mean, even if a client, so first of all, I think it depends on the experience of the client. If the client has no idea what to ask or how to phrase the proper question, the questions will keep on going. And what's happening is they're slowing down the developer. There's got to be some kind of a barrier, right?
Mhm.
So that's why we try to make sure there's some kind of a process. If we're on a call, obviously, and or if a client is like, listen, I understand the process, I understand what needs to be done. I do want to ask the developer the direct question. That's not a problem, but we also try to keep it, instead of just messages on a regular basis. Hey, we have our sprint calls, on a weekly basis. Let's
Mhm.
go over them. So we have a clear understanding of who's doing what and what is expectations, right? So the client's not assuming, the developer or the project manager is not assuming. But if there is a question that's going to go, let's say, to the developer from the client, the project manager should be involved to actually know also what's going on with that project.
All right. So let's talk a bit about just pure communication within the team, right? Culture. You guys are remote. I presume people in different countries, people in definitely different locations, but possibly different countries. What do you do as a team? What do you do as a company to make sure it's one joint team and people are aligned, especially given that you have project based. So I'm assuming people move from project to project every once in a while. So their team members might be different tomorrow than they were today.
So most of the time, the team members are the same for the project, but
Right.
it's not.
But I
We're
mean,
not
when the project changes, right? I'm talking about when
when
the
the
project
project
changes.
changes. Yeah, I mean, my team's been with me for years. So thankfully, that's worked out very well. What do we do? I mean, we've done like virtual happy hours when the team members that actually here, we would actually get together for lunches. We would get together at the office. If
Hmm.
anybody wanted to come in. We do a funny thing at the end of the year where this is actually an idea from one of my project managers to kind of like send out information about the funniest things that has happened within projects, internal. You know what I mean? Just
Oh,
it's not, obviously I love the face to face type of
right.
energy, or office energy. Like it's amazing. But at the same time, until I started working more remote, you really don't understand how much time you waste.
Absolutely.
Like I went to the office the other day, and our office space is in a co-working space. So I know a lot of people there. They're actual clients of ours as
Hmm.
well. Several other people are clients there as well, and it's just conversation after conversation, which is good for me because
Right.
I'm the face of the company. I got to talk to people. Some clients. There's some just colleagues and good contacts who've become friends as well. But it's a big waste of time. Big waste of time.
Absolutely.
So
For
if you
sure.
really think about it, okay, let's say average 8-hour day. Let's say out of those 8 hours, I mean, you're probably only working 5, I would
If
say,
that. If
if
that.
that. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I think definitely a lot more productivity happens in our area. I'm located in around Washington D.C. and Baltimore area. In our area, there's a lot of traffic. So if you're driving, I mean, you're spending about an hour, hour and a half. Just majority of the people live close to the office, but still, if you're spending an hour in traffic each way,
Hmm.
it sucks.
Years ago, I had a job interview. This is probably 20 years ago. I mean, a long time ago. I had a job interview for a company for a position of VP of engineering. It was a smaller company, maybe 30, 40 people, like really smaller company. And it was one of those cases where the existing VP was still there. He was leaving and, he was hiring his own replacement. Actually, it's a good thing. And so they made me an offer. And then, I haven't said yes or no at that point. Right? They made me an offer. And then the guy who was a VP, and I was there, right? I've talked to a few people,
Yeah.
a few times, right? Team members, other management, obviously the CEO, the founder. And after they make me an offer, this VP guy calls me and says, "Hey, before you say yeah or nay, let's get together for lunch." Okay, that's a little odd, but sure, let's
Mhm.
do that. So we got together for lunch, and he's like, "Well, you seem like a nice guy. I like you. So, I'll give you some information, and then, do whatever you want with it." Long story short, right, he gave me information. I've asked to meet with the team, with few team members to verify the information. Turned out to be true, and that helped me decline the offer. But the deal was, and this is what was so hilarious, the CEO measured success by how much time you spent in the office in front of a computer. And to do this, he would obtain weekly data from the parking garage to see when people pulled in and pulled out from the car, right? Because there's no time card, so you can't
Wow.
figure out when somebody
Yeah.
came in, but you can figure out when they drove into the building. And I looked at it and I asked him, I talked to him and I said, "This is what I'm hearing. Is that true?" He says, "Yeah, absolutely, that's true. It's not a secret. I tell everybody knows this." I said, "So why are you doing this?" He says, "Well, how else can I measure somebody's performance?"
Hmm.
Said, "So what you're measuring is how much time they're spending here, right? What they do is they come in, they sit in front of a computer and they read a book or they do their
Right.
own thing. just because they're here doesn't mean they're being productive. And so, long story short, that's where that
100%.
ended. Scary thought of how people try to measure one's success.
Wow. Very interesting. Well, everybody got their own methods, I guess. I mean, today, thankfully, there are new technologies to do that.
Yeah, but I don't. My employees, I explicitly tell them I don't care how long you work. Like, I really don't care how much you work. If you work an hour a day, great. Like, I'm happy for you as long as the work is done and I
Right.
feel like you're doing enough. I just don't care how much you work.
Right. I hear you.
Cool. Anyway, any thoughts? Our target audience are technology leaders mostly, right? They're people that are running engineering teams. Some of them have a lot of experience running remote teams. Some of them don't. Some of them are running outsourcing teams. Some of them it's local hires, either direct local hires or somebody like you. Like a local, I
Right.
mean direct hires, they're remote, or they work through us or companies like us. What's your word of advice? So what do you think this managers, these leaders can do to make teams more efficient, more productive, and ultimately have people stay longer?
Well, first of all, I think it's a very loaded question, but I think it really depends on what type of product or company is being built. Like, for example, somebody that exited, he's probably gonna like a very good exit. He's probably gonna have a lot more A players saying, "I want to join their team," and they're gonna
Mhm.
be more focused on it because of his past experience. Or somebody that has been around for a while, is credible, has really good feedback from people. But if you're just starting off, so let's say if you're just a startup, you have an idea, I think it's also, not I think, it's also the passion, the way you're able to understand what you're trying to solve, right? And what you're trying to build. People feel that. Especially, I think maybe with some engineers, it's a little, they're not really salespeople. And not that you have to sell, but when you find that inner
Right.
passion,
Mhm.
and you're able to properly communicate it, right? I think the people usually they hear it, and if something really clicks, like, oh my God, this could actually work. So in other words, you have to know how to present. You have to know how to pitch.
Absolutely.
If you
Absolutely.
know how to pitch, doesn't matter if you're pitching an employee, if you're pitching an investor, if you're pitching, customers, you have to know how to pitch. If you know how to present that, kind of like, one time, long time ago, I've never forget, we had a client that gave us a presentation on Cat in the Hat, Dr. Seuss.
Okay.
And the whole point behind, he gave it to our whole team. We brought him in to give it to our whole team. And the whole point behind the presentation was to show how Cat in the Hat, right, was creative in how he pitched eggs and ham.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Remember, he said, "Would you like it in the car? Would you like it in the water? Would you like it?" Like,
Right. Of
he
course.
went to all, again, that was very different approach, but I love the creativity, how he thought about the
Right.
book that was for kids to say, well, you can use this to learn how to, if they say no here, which is totally fine, maybe they just don't want it in a wet spot. They want it to be in a dry spot. So I think this is the same thing. I think this is the first thing to really make people believe, is to know how to be able to present your idea and where it's going. And obviously, none of us have a clear goal, but like, if you really see it, if you really picture it, you're like, this is what's going to happen. Things will change, it will evolve, which is totally normal. So I think that's one type of scenario for startups, right? For bigger companies or more experienced people, I mean, again, depends who you're going after, what type of players. If you're going after A players and they hear your experience, what you have done, because you've already built this experience, I think that would also help to excite them and,
Right.
be able to say, listen, I'm interested in what I'm working on. I mean, you should have people interested in what they're working on, because if they're not going to have any type of interest, any like to what, or love, I'm not even saying love, but like to what they're working on, then they shouldn't even be on a team.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, that's a great pointer. I think I hope more people do that. We always
Right.
tell, when people talked about outsourcing before, right, it was all about cost, and then it became about skills. But really, it's about alignment. It's about getting
Alignment,
the
yeah.
right people in and getting them aligned. And then, yeah, sure, skills, and sure, yes, it does come at a cost savings, but that shouldn't be the main motivator.
Right, 100%. And then obviously, you're working with certain people. I mean, listen, I've had people. I had a guy in one situation. He worked with us. He was a contractor. He worked with us for, I want to say, maybe 5, 6 years. And
Mhm.
whatever happened, just, I don't know. He just the alignment, definitely. We were not aligned anymore. I'm not even talking about
Yeah.
me. I never had a problem with him. Never, I thought he was a great guy, great work, very productive. And he's brought another guy that he's worked with at a previous company on another big project that we had. And I'm like, how does he do it so quickly? He's like, he's always been very, very efficient, out of all the engineers that worked in the
Right.
company. But at a certain point, he just, I don't know what it was. He just did not click with some of the team members. The project manager, the project coordinator, and I was just like, listen, man, what's going on? He's like, I don't know. I just, we don't see eye to eye. So
Hmm.
maybe it's time just for you to move on, like, yeah, we've used you on projects. He's like, yeah, I want to work, I like the money that's coming in, but if we don't see eye to eye
That's not it.
with
Right.
them, yeah. I said, absolutely. Listen, I don't want you to wake up in the morning and feel like, oh my God, I got to do this. And I don't want them to feel like that as well. And then come back to me and be like, hey,
Right.
why is he answering us this way? So it's just people outgrow each other. It is what it is, you know?
Absolutely.
It sucks, because like I said, I have people that I have worked with for years,
Yep.
and we're still working together. So, yeah,
Max, thank you so much. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
same here.